out that new stuff as well as tournaments and anything else that we got going on. But yeah, just glad to be here. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
All right. Well, we're happy you're here. Obviously, you've been part of a lot of tournaments since TFT has begun. You've snuck into a lot of top lobbies, a lot of finals lobbies over the last few months. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of things to talk about. But before we get to that, before we get to our tournament talk, we have to talk about the patch. That's right. And I'm talking about patch 10.16, the patch that came out just today. We'll take a look at it. Obviously, just as a sort of like broad strokes look initially, there were buffs to what you see on the left, nerfs to what you see on the right. And so I'll throw you the first question, Khroen. Like, above everything else in this patch, what has stood out to you the most since getting a couple games in on it?
What has stood out to me the most? Well, the buffs to Gangplank and Jinx for that Rebels composition, and the new Galaxy, actually, Savage World. I think this is the highest skill expression galaxy by far that TFT has. So I'm really excited to see what people do on that and to play on it more myself. I played one game on it, but that's it.
All right, I have not gotten to play on the new Galaxy yet, so that excites me a lot to hear you talk about that, because I was, when I was looking at it, I was like, this Galaxy actually looks like way too complex for me to be good at. But we'll see, because I think it's one of those things, and we're talking about Salvage World. So when you sell a champion, any completed items that they're holding are broken down into their components. You can see on the screen right there, which creates just all these insane scenarios. Frodan, have you put much thought into this galaxy yet? Oh, it seems like you muted, buddy. There you go. Or maybe it's a technical issues. What Frodan has to say to us is like too hot. It's too hot for the stream to handle right now. His takes are just too hot.
Apparently so. Feels
Oh,
bad.
well, while Frodan figures that out, I'll give you my impressions on it. So basically, you have to sell a champion to activate it, first of all, which already creates a very complex sort of dynamic to it, in that you're generally only going to be breaking down items that you have on champions that you are intending to use, right? So this to me seems more than anything like a way to create like huge pivots. If you can not only swap the champions on your board, you can also totally remake your items. That creates just like the craziest pivot options. And is that kind of what you were thinking about, Khroen, when you were talking about the skill expression? Being able to not only swap
Yeah.
your synergies, but also all of the items?
Yeah, exactly. And you can do that from the beginning in the early game. I had a game earlier where I slammed like Ionic Spark and a Chalice just because I had those items after the first neutrals. Used that up until stage 3, sold and pivoted, remade all of those items into something else. And it's just like you can still do that throughout every part of the game. You can tell you or ask yourself, like, what gives me the best power spike now in terms of the item, and what
Yeah.
item am I going to want to use after that? And you have so many combinations with all the units on your board and all items that you've already made, that the skill expression there and finding what's optimal throughout the whole course of the entire game is just like it's so big brain. Actually, I love it.
I really like it. Because the funny thing is, like, before this galaxy was announced, I was thinking about. I had the thought where it was like, well, what if there's a galaxy where you can like take apart items, or you can remake things in some way to kind of like do that.
Yeah.
But I did not think of making you sell the champion that they were on to activate that. That in itself adds like a lot of fairness, I think, to it, in that you may be quote unquote harming your board by doing that if you don't
Mhm.
have like a really solid plan to remake and put those items on something new. So I like that there's a cost to it. I like that they
Oh, yeah.
put that in a galaxy, but it makes you pay for it too, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Because some people like are kind of too eager on their pivots a lot of the time, and they make their board even weaker than it previously was. So that combined with the fact that your items are still there, giving you that power. If you're going to sell it, do you actually have the item that you want to put in right now? Is that item stronger at this certain time, and is the unit that you're going to put in even stronger at that time? So it's just like so many variables there. Exactly, kind of what you said with is the right time to sell that unit.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you know, people, I've seen people say about this like, "Oh, well, it just makes the game easier cuz now you can just remake your items all the time." But it's like, "No, that's actually not true at all, because there's that huge cost to doing it." So I think it's fascinating. I can't wait to see how that galaxy is going to work out. I'm like dying for tournament games to see it. I'm really hoping we see it in like fight night here on Giant Slayer plug on Thursday nights, because that'd be awesome to see. But let's talk about some of the other patch changes as well. Did Rebels need a buff?
Hmm. If it's always so weird buffing Jinx, because Jinx is one of those champions that if you buff her even like little bit too slightly, she just becomes very dominant. And I
Mhm.
am kind of worried that Jinx might be too dominant in this patch.
Hmm.
Especially when you also buff Gangplank. I think Gangplank is one of those, or kind of the only champion that will synergize quite as well with Rebels, like better than anything else. So
Mhm.
combining Jinx buffs and GP helping her reset faster. Um, yeah, I think that might have been a bit too much, but I'm hesitant to say that. I think that
Well,
buffing Jinx is like fine, considering the power levels of everything else seemed a bit stronger in the previous patch.
uh-huh. Well, we'll see how it goes. Because
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
too early
whole
to say.
like 5 AD meme, right?
Mhm.
Fro Frodan, are you with us? Say something, Frodan.
Nope.
Oh, rip. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get that working again soon. But I agree. Like it is interesting to see the rebel trait buffed, Jinx buffed a tiny bit. It's a little buff, but then also Gangplank getting decent size buff, enough to maybe push him back into higher levels of viability again.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit. Oh, Zed as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Getting a little bit of a buff too. But I want to talk about some of the items because some of the items have had some really interesting changes here too. First of all, Hand of Justice, obviously, big item change. It's much more usable now in terms of one side of the trait. If it's activated, doesn't end up mattering a whole lot. Where it's like 50, healing on auto attacks didn't matter for a lot of champions, but now you can put this item on spellcasters. So where do you think Hand of Justice is going to work best at this point, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, so I think the item, this is a huge change for it to be good late game. Like maybe at some point ago it was a slammable item, but not really. Like if you're looking at late game fights with the previous patches, Hand of Justice, if you roll plus 50 health on hit, like it's not going to matter during a fight. The fight's gonna be so fast, it's really not going to do anything. But
Yeah.
now that you get the healing from abilities, your spells, it's really really good on things like I think mech actually mech.
Right.
Hodge
I
is
was thinking about that.
pretty nuts.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple people try to run that, and it's looked really good. Victor as well. If Victor takes any damage when he casts a spell, he'll just heal to full. Victor does so much damage.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure what the other best champions to use Hodge on, but overall, it's a really good item, and I definitely need to experiment with it a lot more.
What about Shaco? Is this just another kind of like a self-sustaining item he can use along with like Bloodthirster, things like that?
Perhaps, yeah. I think actually the amount of damage that he does with the auto attacks, he'll heal pretty heavily. It could be a BT substitute, or if you roll 50% damage as well, like Shaco
Yeah,
can
that's
use
also
that as
good.
well, so.
Right. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
I
kind of
agree.
wondering.
Definitely a lot more value. I don't know if it would still be optimal. Like maybe BT would still just be overall better to get that always healing, because you're not really worried too much about Shaco's damage. He already has a lot of damage. Don't need to
True.
roll the 50%, but still wouldn't be bad though. Yeah.
I think another thing that it could go for is if we could go back to the item section. I think another thing that it could really benefit too is possibly Echo as well. To just bring Echo back up again after he ults and kind of keep him around for possibly even a second ult. It's already decent on Echo because it's got a tier on it and a little bit of dodge and crit, but like I think it could be extra good now.
Oh yeah, definitely agree there. I think a couple of the changes to items actually benefit Echo a lot. Static Shiv being the other one there, but
it's the healing stuff on the items in this patch is really interesting. Like the Hextech Gunblade got a big change as well, where now it can generate up to a 400 health shield, which doesn't seem like a lot of health late game, but it's just another thing where if it's continuously generating, if you get a champion that's attacking quickly, it could get out of control a little bit.
Oh yeah, I think even 400 health like is a significant amount. Even late game, like that often can be the difference between getting another cast of your ultimate off, which can decide a fight. So I think it's actually pretty impactful. I was doing a little bit of thinking and theory crafting as to what Gunblade would be good on. Obviously, the only things that it has really been good on previously are units like Aurelion Soul and Jace, and it will still continue to be good on those. But I was even thinking something along the lines of like, would it be good on Riven? She has her shields, but I'm giving her more shields apart from that, and when they get bursted down, healing and then generating more shields. I wonder. It's something to test, but definitely going to be a lot more viable now. I think this is a really good and healthy change for Hextech Gunblade. So,
well, you know me, man. I'm always thinking about Darius as well. Like, so I'm wondering if like I'm thinking like Darius with something like Death Cap, Hex Tech, and then like a Protector Spatula, right? It's going to be getting like tons of damage, tons of healing, tons of shields. Stacking that Protector shield, on top of the shield from the Hex Tech, it could get crazy, But we'll talk about
shields.
We'll talk about pirates a little bit later. I want to talk about one more item, which is a Static Shiv, because to me, I see this item and I'm like, all right, so I probably want to put this on Teemo is the person that immediately jumps to mind as like an alternate third item possibly for him, because in that comp, there's always crowd control happening basically, and he attacks pretty quickly. Even though he did get a little bit of an attack speed nerf, he's still going to be attacking quickly. So I wonder if he's going to get a lot of value from that. But like, who else do you see maybe benefiting from the Static Shiv here?
Definitely Echo. I believe, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the interaction with Echo and Static Shiv is that he will proc the true damage, because his ability does count as a CC.
Because he slows.
Yeah. I haven't thought about the Teemo thing actually, but now that you've mentioned it, it's starting to maybe resonate as something that's good. Like Teemo, is the standard, blue buff Morellos, and he's just like a spellcaster. But maybe he does have pretty high attack speed, even with the .05 nerf there. So maybe it is a good Teemo item.
I kind of want to
Others,
try it
not really
as
sure yet,
like,
though.
yeah, I kind of want to try as like a third item first, maybe. He's
Yeah.
still, I think, Tyr and Morello's obviously you still want above anything else on Teemo, but like that third item slot is a little bit flexible. Maybe that's where it stands. Frodan, are you back with us yet?
I think so. I switched mic inputs. Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you much better now. Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, any opinions on the stuff we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think that you guys summarized some of the more exciting changes. Definitely Hand of Justice and Hextech Gunblade are like much more usable now. And I have tried Shiv on a couple of different users, and it seems really effective. I think like Battlecast is now very hard to deal with in the early mid game if they get Kog'Maw online, and Static Shiv just makes it really powerful now because he gets extra procs. So it's in general just like a really solid item at all junctures of the game now. And so yeah, like Static Shiv is also like kind of an item I slam now in Cybernetics. I tried that for 2 games and ended up doing really well because Lucian can hold it really well. And then you just transfer that to Echo, like Khroen was talking about.
Okay, that makes sense. I could talk all day about this stuff too, but we'll go through the other items real quick. Swordbreaker is another one that I'm kind of curious about if this is going to be more usable now at 33%. Quick yes or no, yay or nay, Swordbreaker. More usable, yay or nay?
I mean, more usable, yes. It's still like meh if you happen to have those items and you're not looking to build anything else. Sure, you can slam it if you're going like Brawler Blasters. Even if you have a mid game like Cybernetics with Lucian plus Ezreal or something, you can. But overall, meh.
Okay, Frodan.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I think it's like one of those like sometimes useful items, but it's like 2 battles at most per game, and you get it off of Kane or something, and you're probably going to use it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's what I thought. Let's move on real quick. We've got 5 more minutes to talk about patch notes. Let's talk about some nerfs, actually. A couple, pretty appropriate ones coming through, I think, as far as like Bard getting brought down a peg a little bit at the first tier. Vanguard's nerfed a little bit at the 6th Vanguard level. Not a huge amount. Let's start with that. Do you think the Vanguard nerf going from 1,000 to 900 armor, bonus armor, is enough of a difference maker? Does that really change it that much?
Yeah, maybe I'm stupid, but like I don't know how going from 1,000 to 900 is really that impactful. Like I kind of view it like literally the exact same, even though obviously it's 100 armor. But if you're taking, I don't know the exact math on it, but if you're taking the fact that say Last Whisper versus even 6 Vanguards, it's not going to do that much. Like you'll deal some damage to it, but they're still going to be like between 70 to 80% like mitigation there. I don't know the exact number, but going to 900 doesn't seem like it'll actually change that much to me.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. It's supposed to be a light touch patch though, I suppose, right?
Yeah, true. Very true.
Yeah, it's exactly what Khroen says. Like, I think the math is if you do 1,000 armor, it's like 91 or 92% damage reduction, which is absurd. Yep. And then that's why you absolutely need Last Whisper. So 900, I think, pushes it to like the 86 range. It's like a small boost, but like you're still never cutting through their armor if you have Last Whisper. And also same thing of what Khroen was talking about. Like even if you do have Last Whisper, you better be having more damage besides just like one physical sniper, or you need Jhin, which will blow past all their armor. Doesn't really matter. So I think it doesn't functionally change much. And also 6 Vanguard was kind of rotating out anyways. We haven't really seen too much Vanguard Mystic plays. There's only a few players that really still love it, like Aegon, for example. So it was already on its way out.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Fair enough. So let's move on to one of my favorite traits, which is Space Pirate. Got a little bit better at 4 Space Pirates. So now combining this with maybe some of the item changes, with some of the buffs that Darius got in the last patch, like our Space Pirates online, is this finally, after so many months of set 3, is this the Space Pirates patch?
So I've always viewed Space Pirates, 4 Space Pirates specifically, as, maybe you're high rolling that game and you happen to already have, been playing Pirates to generate some gold. You happen to high roll a GP and you can put them in for a couple of rounds until you, lose enough HP that you're comfortable with to take them out, pivot to whatever endgame comp you want to, and have those extra items. And I think it's going to be more effective in terms of doing that. I know some players who do play Space Pirates, for Space Pirates, like to keep them in for a while. I actually was watching kiyoon stream earlier, and kiyoon was playing 4 Pirates. It was greeting out of his mind and ended up going like 6 or something because he just kept 4 Pirates in the whole time. And he had a lot of items. It just wasn't a strong enough composition there. There's like a
Happens
grave
to the
one
best
doing
of us.
nothing. Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a balance that you have to have there in terms of how long to actually keep those 4 Pirates in. But going from 25% to 33% chance to drop an item, I believe. Yeah, it is. Then yeah, it makes it more viable to get those couple rounds of items, and that could be the difference when you winning or losing a game.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about when it comes to that. So the Space Pirate chance to proc here is actually not just like a flat 8%. It's 8% across 4 pirates, and it's also across all the units that Gangplank's going to hit with his ability. So you actually have a pretty significant chance increase. It's not just like a flat 8% here. So it's a big deal. But it's exactly what Khroen's described, which is that by the time like you're in that late game scenario, you're going up against the likes of like Echo and Aurelian Soul and Janna and Xerath hitting 2-star, and you have like Graves and Darius trying to get through like a Gnar that's just unkillable. Like it's like, so these are kind of dynamics in the late game that you really have to evaluate. There's a player, so Piva has been actually playing some Space Pirates too. He's been in a lot of my lobbies lately, and he was kind of saying like, if I get Rumble, I'm going Space Pirates. And he played like a mech Space Pirates thing, and he actually did okay and got top 4 a few times. So there's like some interesting meme builds being thrown around here. I'm not sure how good that is, but it's definitely fun to see the experimentation. And if there's one player that I can trust to figure that out, it'd be a player like Piva.
Yeah, true. I love watching Piva. Like whether he runs it down or has like these brilliant ideas, I just like love watching Piva, and I have since I've been casting Fight Night in like set 2, and he did this like the Piva round, we called it, went to 4-3, rolled down to 0 gold. He's on like 10 HP, but somehow stabilizes and wins half the time. He's just a very exciting player to watch.
The off meta is the best meta. That's what I say. One real quick last thing with that we should mention with the patch notes is Chrono changing a little bit. It's getting a little bit better at 4, at 6 theoretically. Is this enough to bring back the Chrono builds a little bit? Quick yes or no. Khroen, yes or no?
No.
Frodan, yes or no?
No.
Okay. We'll dive into that more at a later date. Let's move on to our main topic of conversation here, which is tournament results and formats. So obviously, July was a really, really big month for tournaments in TFT. We had a lot of qualifiers. We had the TL one. We had the C9 one. We had the OCE qualifiers, which, there's a lot to talk about there with that. We also had the GiantSlayer EU Cup, which is a team-based thing. We had Mort Dog Top 4 Madness, which is a top 4 thing. But let's go through this kind of, and we'll talk about formats a little bit later, but let's just talk about tournament results right now and kind of like how we think everything sort of shook out. So Team Liquid, here and there, like Khroen, obviously, like you have a lot of insight into these from playing in a lot of these tournaments. So give us first your broad month in review of tournaments, how everything came together, how were they ran, what do you think about results? Give us like the broad strokes on the month of tournaments that was July.
Oh man, that's very, very open-ended.
It is. That's the idea of it. That's.
I mean, I think a lot of the tournaments were good. Personally, I didn't really like the Team Liquid qualifiers and how the formats were. Ever since the week where I went top 4 every single round, but still didn't advance to the next one. I was like, okay, this format's kind of weird for me. I understand like you're trying to make it more important to place higher in the subsequent rounds after first and second, et cetera, but I mean, oh well, that wasn't really a tournament that favored my play style and just being consistent, but rewarded just like going for firsts. But Simple Plan and Robin Songs, who qualified, both really good players, demonstrated that in that tournament, qualified for the NAOC finals. What next? The C9 Nebula tournament.
Right.
About that. Yeah, I think who qualified for there? Sleet and Milk. Saint Vicious nearly did. I think like Saint was playing really, really, really well these past couple of patches. And then actually, so Saint's 8th place and my 8th place during these finals were both trying to play 6 Battlecast. So basically,
that's
Battlecast.
right.
Yeah.
Man.
And if Saint probably hadn't tried to play Battlecast there and like literally gotten like 7th place or 6th in that game, like he would have qualified over Sleep probably. Melk's always been a good player. I'm not surprised he qualified from there. Sleep played really, really well. Yeah, I actually did this so hard this tournament.
I'm sorry to bring this up again.
What happened? Okay, so honestly, these past couple of patches, ever since I like put a lot of time in focusing on Twitch rivals and like for the league portion of that, like literally I didn't play TFT for that whole week. And I played a lot of league.
I knew it was Twitch rivals. I knew it was going to come down to that.
Man, who runs that stuff?
Frodan, how can you let this happen? You can blame Frodan completely for this, by the way.
It was a great event. It was worth it. Ended up winning that, so super, super worth. But I did feel a little bit behind on TFT, and I came like that combined. Like I still qualified for the finals and stuff. Like I played well enough to get there, but then playing that week, it just nothing really clicked with me, and just didn't play well that day either. So. Kind of into that. Like I get to the finals, but then that one was just doomed.
So speaking of another tournament you got to the finals for, what did you think about the Mortdog top 4 madness? Because you mentioned earlier about your play style, and I feel like this was a tournament that really supported your play style.
Oh yeah, definitely did. It does support my play style. I like this tournament overall. There's only one thing that I didn't like is the fact that it didn't go from round of 32 to round of 16 and then top 8, but it went just from 32 to 8. So it's called, this is the meme is Mortdog's top 4 madness, but only top 2 advanced.
Top 2,
and that's like kind of true. I think you're top 4ing, but top 4ing in the round of 32 wasn't good enough for a lot of people. You needed to get first place a couple times or top 4 every single game. Like there was no room for error there. But overall, I liked it. It worked well with my playstyle overall. Granted, in the finals, I went to kind of 1st or 8th style. I played literally 6 Blade Masters every single game.
I was going to ask you about that. So now, Mort and I were talking about this a lot on the stream when we were casting this. And Mort's in chat right now. Hey, Mort. But so was that just sort of like the game plan going into it, that like 6 Blade Masters was what you were going to do? But I feel like I don't see you force comps very often. When I think of your playstyle, I don't think of you a player that likes to force comps constantly. So what was the plan there?
Yeah, I really don't. But I researched everyone going into that lobby, and only one player had like 1 or 2 games on 6 p.m. So if it's a comp that is not going to be contested by anybody, a comp that I think is good, that I like running, and I, again, from these past couple patches, I wasn't like super, super confident in always being able to play effectively in my usual play style and just being really, really flexible and pivoting to top 4s. So I was like, screw it, I'll just play 6 PMs every game. And actually, while the end results ended up me getting 5th, if I had top 4'd in either games 2 or 4, the games where I got 8th place, I was contested one of them. But if I had gotten one more top 4, I actually would have won the whole tournament because I ended up winning game 5, which got me to 30 points. Yeah, because with the format, you need 30 points and then a win. But Aegon played really, really well and was able to top 4 for literally every single game. So he ended up winning that. But yeah, just very interesting format there. It's like, damn, if I had just gotten one more top 4 placement, I would have been able to win. So maybe I shouldn't have forced it every single game. But overall, I'm like not too upset with how I played over this tournament. Like losing to tiebreakers and getting 5th is kind of unfortunate because usually tiebreakers help me out. But KCI and Chubak both got 2 firsts during the finals, and I only had 1. So is how it is.
It was really interesting to see that format come together, and I think out of the individual tournament formats that we've seen, so kind of throwing out the team stuff for a moment, talking about individual tournaments, it's the format that kind of like grabbed the most attention for me, as in like this could be a tournament that with some modifications could be a really good one going forward, because to a certain extent, getting top 4 is emphasized so much already in the game that it does bring the tournament sort of like experience closer to possibly the ladder experience. Although there's a big difference, obviously, between 0 for 5th and much better, for lack of a better term, LP lost for 5th and 8th, right? But
Yeah.
Frodan, what do you think as far as individual tournament formats go? As far as individual, I don't know how to really describe this. How do you say this? Where it's like a solo player versus a team? I don't know. Solo tournaments. It doesn't seem like the right term either. I don't know. Regular point system we're used to versus top 4 kind of stuff. What do you think?
I think this is a really clever tournament format that like really tries to showcase consistency as like your primary skill set, because you know, people who win lobbies a lot of times at the highest level, there's nothing really that you can do to stop that. Like you can try, but like people who high roll, like part of the reason why challenger players are so good is because they understand how to capitalize when they get lucky. And a lot of times they're going to be able to convert that to a first and second every single time. And so usually number 1, number 2, you're never beating them. But number 3 and 4 is usually really up for grabs a lot of the time. And oftentimes about like minimizing your losses, all-inning a lot on an off cadence, you know, slamming items, like, or just trying to take a risk and being rewarded for that risk. And I think that that's not really emphasized too much in tournaments. We try to do that by saying there's a break point between 3rd and 4th, fourth and fifth, but it's a little bit arbitrary, right? In terms of like what's the break point. Sometimes 5th place is like a really skill intensive thing to get when you're like normally doomed for like a 7th or an 8th.
Yeah.
And so what this format tries to really emphasize is like one of the more important skill sets, which is converting and maximizing the range of possibilities that your composition is supposed to finish. And I do like the more I watch this tournament, I did get to watch the last couple of games. The more I watch like win and you win the tournament is pretty exciting, because then it kind of sets up a natural narrative that everyone can latch onto. That's very definitive. You know, the part of the problem with like some TFT tournaments in the past is, you know, we have the game closed and we're like, we're not sure what's going to happen, but I'm pretty sure this entire tournament was determined 15 minutes ago.
Or it's like,
and we'll just have to find out.
Game, but this guy wins the tournament. That's the thing that I haven't enjoyed with casting TFT is like that last game when you do know what's happening, you're like, oh, this guy won the game. Wow. Oh, but this guy won the tournament. So you kind of like downplay one player's success and elevate another player that isn't having that high moment. It is a bit odd. So do you feel like there's some sort of middle ground as far as points breakdown where maybe we don't have it drop to 0 after 4th place, but we have something where there's points, but it's a greater degree of drop off than what we currently see? I like that there's a difference between 4th and 5th, and maybe that needs to be greater, but just not 10-0, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. I actually, another thing to bring up, I actually completely agree with both of your points there about how it's not really, it doesn't follow the narrative well, like a person winning the game but not winning the whole tournament. Like from a spectator and a caster standpoint, it would be better for the person that wins, you know, the last game to win the whole thing. But I think still from a competitor point of view, I would like to, you know, have my consistency over the whole however many games it was to be what's determining if I win or lose. But there is some sort of balance in the middle ground there. But
well, what I really liked about the finals for the more dog top 4 madness was that there was that, you know, get 30 points and then your next first will win you the game. But I like that there was also a element of, well, if you get 50 points overall, that shows like such a string of consistency that also gets you the tournament win. I like that there were those 2 different factors. And so this, you know, I think that's really important, that when we have these tournaments, maybe you don't only have the one criteria to win it, you know?
Yeah, I do like the fact that there was there were multiple criteria to win, and that one had precedence. That if you had 30 and 1, that you would have the win priority over someone who just had 5 top 4s. I do think there is room to, at least for the earlier rounds of the tournament, to make specific placements matter. I was kind of theory crafting something with a couple other friends, maybe not just like a 11 points for first, but say like a 14 for first, and then like say 12 for second, and like 11 and 10, and then 8th place getting -1, but then 7th getting 0, and 6th getting like 1, or just something like that to differentiate. Maybe it's like too small of a gap, but to differentiate those placements a little bit, so that if you have a couple of firsts, but then say like get I don't know, like a 5th or something, that you can still show that those placements and playing, you know, to get the 5th over getting the 7th or something. You can show that in the points over just I don't know, getting 5 or like 4 fourths and then like going through or something like that.
So This kind of brings us to our next topic, because we can chat about something where the information was just released to us today, which is the topic of the Galaxies Championship, and that format does not include any of those things we were just talking about. The point values for day one. Well, first of all, the point values change between day one and day two, which is interesting. And the second part of it is that it doesn't have any sort of differentiation between fourth and below fourth. And as far as winning the tournament goes, you must get a first to win the tournament. So theoretically, with the way the points breakdown is for the final days, that could be a lot of games. And while I love watching TFT, from a broadcasting standpoint, having no definitive ending or like estimation of how long a broadcast is going to take is a problem, especially if you want to take this a step further and think about what TFT events in the future are going to look like. There are going to need to be time frames that things fit in. And so this kind of format, I feel like, isn't something you'd want to use down the line when you have to kind of fit those broadcast windows. What do you think, Frodan? You obviously are involved in tons of esports broadcasts every week. What do you think about this?
So I did this event format for the Galaxy Showcase, and right. It ended up being, kind of like lopsided. There were clearly some players that were a tier and a half above some of the other players, and that's not disrespect to any of the streamers that showed up. It's just like
sure.
Some players were like dedicated sweats, and some were just more, meme streamers from their region. And in the end, we actually finished it, I think, in 4 games, which was like a totally fine number. But you're right in the sense that it could have gone to 8 or 9 lobbies. I think that was like the maximum number it could have gone to before like mathematically someone had to win. And I think that was because they had a higher number requirement for points. So by lowering it, I think the range is like as early as 3, obviously. But right. I think the maximum is like 6. So it's okay. I think it's reasonable. Like it's not. It's definitely like they're trying to keep it a very simple format, and I think it's like a really important thing, because if there's anything that we've kind of learned is that in the past, Riot's been trying really complicated formats. You remember the showcase for Rise of the Elements? It was like so elaborate and convoluted with like all these different kind of win conditions,
right?
That they really tried to make it more like fun and personality driven for competition, and not being very successful. So I think this is fine to go off of. It's definitely not the best competitive system that we've developed. But I think it's okay as like the first time, and I think part of the reason why they're going for it is because they did it before. So
sure.
They want to go with the tried and true formula.
I think it's interesting that they wouldn't use something that was a little bit more tried and true, even in that there's been a lot of tournaments throughout the course of the year that have used formats very different from this that have been proven to work well, and then there's just some kind of oddities, like why in the day 2 structure is there a drop between first and second? That's pretty normal, but why is there a drop between second and third, but then not a drop between fourth and fifth, which is a much more logical points place to drop it down? That's the kind of stuff that confuses me, because it's not really, and I'm not saying this is wrong, like it could be a perfectly fine tournament format. And again, I've said many times over the course of the year that TFT is an esport that's still very much in its infancy, and we need to experiment a lot with this. But for something like the championships of the whole year, to create sort of this, format that isn't quite in line with a lot of the tournaments, especially a lot of the qualifying tournaments to this finals, and then also have just arbitrary, strange things like a drop in points from second to third. Does it seem like this format is like a little bit out of touch with what the community has kind of been developing for this game? I feel like it is a little bit.
I think it's okay. Like I said, I don't feel like there's too much like I guess to answer your point directly, I don't think it's out of touch. I think it's out of touch if they just ran a simple point system and they just did exactly what like Fight Night would be like, because I think that would be anti-hype, and I don't think that would sell TFT in a good light. And if I can go off of the previous time we've had an event like that, the only other big land in the West that for TFT has been TwitchCon. And I helped run that event, and I have a lot of regrets the way that finals went down, because I feel like it painted TFT in a negative light, because it was just, there's a lot of opportunities for hype moments and it just wasn't there. And there's a lot of reasons I could break down into it, but the summary of it was that we didn't have like a big finale and conclusion to it.
Right.
The points breakdown from first to second, from second to third, those things are like, kind of like, in my opinion, nitpicking, which is like what's really skillful in the game, and we can argue about that for like hours and hours. But in the end, I think like the fundamental thing, which is like the day one point structure that seeds into day two, and then you have like the win and in, and now all of a sudden you're the champion, I think is a solid concept. I think that having alternative win conditions is also interesting, but what you don't want is like someone to get 5th place and yet they win, because that just isn't really the spirit of the competition, because I don't think that's going to be like a really good spectating experience. And because it's their first Galaxy Championship, keeping it really simple is important, because they can develop it more as time goes on. As the player base and the viewer base matures in terms like and understands how competition goes, you can start to introduce a lot more elaborate formats. But time and time again, I think there's a lot of like esports teams that like when they first start off, they do so complicated rule sets and formats, and they kind of lose a lot of the people that are trying to get into the game. And quite frankly, too, TFT is already hard enough of a genre and game to get into if you don't play it. So I think like having something really bare bones is kind of important, just from like a bird's eye view.
Sure, I agree, and I do want to stress too that I'm not trying to be alarmist with this. Obviously, again, like I don't think anyone more than me has said like we shouldn't get too excited about anything that really goes on, like excited in a negative way with anything that goes on in TFT this year, because it's all experimentation right now. It's such a new esport that we can't afford to get like bent out of shape about stuff too much. But I just found it a little bit surprising. Khroen, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty firm believer that in no world in TFT competitions there shouldn't be a larger gap between first and second and fourth and fifth. Like if that gap is the same as all the other placements, like I don't think that works at all. I think there needs to be a gap or a larger gap between first and second and fourth to fifth. My personal opinion, I just think that it downplays very heavily the impact and implication that getting a top 4 has in the game, with just the way that top 4 means like you're gaining LP, you are winning. That is a success. If you bottom 4, that is significantly worse, even between the 4th and the 5th. If you win a lobby, that impact and implication should be better than getting a second by more than like a 1 point gap. Yeah, I think those are my thoughts for that. I also think that Mortdog was onto something with the multiple win conditions of the top 4 Madness tournament.
Oh,
I think
totally,
yeah. I think that only having 1 win condition for this Worlds, of you need to accumulate 18 points and then win, is I don't know if I want to say is unfair, but may potentially punish players who all get to that same win condition. Even like Frodan was talking about earlier, good players are going to be able to recognize when they are high rolling and translate that into a first place. So if you go into the game, have a really good start, and are able to translate into a first when multiple people are on that win condition, versus somebody else who has been very consistent, but there's no other win condition for being consistency, that's very punishing in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what surprised me, I think, the most when I looked at that, is that there was no alternate win condition right after your lead designer for the game like had a tournament where he thought up the format and had that, which I think a lot of people liked. And I agree, where when it comes down to a lot of people being in that situation, then, are you kind of winging it on a high roll? Which, although I also agree with Frodan, where you need those hype moments, at the end of the day, it's on the talent. It's on the I hate that word talent, by the way, but it's on the casters, I should say, instead to, I see, I've been around the industry too long.
On the commentator.
I hate that. The commentator. It's on the commentator. It's on the caster to make sure that the fans understand those hype moments. And even if somebody isn't winning with a first place in a lobby, the fans should understand that it's still very exciting because they're winning from really great play. And so not having that consistency win in the format is, I think, kind of a disservice to the spirit of TFT. And it's just a little bit surprising too, again, after the tournament that we just closed out last week.
There's a format that I want to try out. It's pretty similar in terms of like the core essence of what most point structures are, but I would like all players to start with 100 points, and top 4 gives you positive points, and bottom 4 minuses points. And it's basically just like a ladder experience, right? Like if you're bottom 4, you lose points. Like it's -1 for 5th and -5 for 8th, and then +5 for 1st and +1. And it's like a pretty big difference, right? And the idea is like you kind of see people vying for that. And I think it's like naturally telling a better story, as opposed to, because at the end, if someone ends at 100, that means they kind of like played exactly in the middle and average. But if someone's like 120, you kind of get like a standard deviation difference between the players and everyone else, as opposed to like, because it's really hard to tell, right? Like when you see Khroen do well in like a Cloud9 Nebula qualifier and he gets like 30 points, that's really impressive. But then, like, how do you tell the difference between Milk qualifying with 22 points? There's really no differentiation in that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, sorry.
So so I'm just like curious about like how we can really continue to play with formats. Like, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like it's not really solved. We're still figuring it out. And again, these are like ideas that like I thought about and I wrote it down on a notepad and I like closed it and never opened it since then. But part of it makes it interesting. And this also just like, take a step back, applies to like almost the entire industry, like Fortnite, Apex Legends, PUBG, like all these other games that are free for all based. No one knows how to like broadcast it, present it, format it correctly and compelling. So we're all kind of like learning at the same time.
Right. Which is part of the fun, honestly. And it's again why, like, despite what things end up looking like, it's not reason to all right, let me just put that there. No matter what the tournament format is, your game isn't dying. The game is not dying. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's growing. We've seen our community grow throughout the year. Experimentation needs to be done. It will continue to get bigger. It's good to have spirited debates about things and discussions like we are having right now, but it's important to separate that stuff from doom and gloom, right? Leave that stuff out of it because, we are the PR for our own game to a certain extent. And if we're talking about how our game is dead, then nobody else is going to want to play it who's maybe thinking about it. So, be constructive with criticism, have discussions. And I think what we just talked about was a great example of that. And, be happy that TFT is having a championship at all. It's great. So that's, I think, maybe a good place to leave.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to say one final thing is that casting the Nebula qualifiers with spots and worlds on the line was actually really fun. Like when there's stakes in the line and like you're watching the impact of like a missed Zephyr or like a mess up and accidentally selling or like buying the wrong thing or like missing stuff on the roll down. Like that adds a lot of gravity situation. The championships is going to be really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to it. And so as much as we can like argue about formats or qualification, there's a lot of like, we didn't even talk about the Oceania qualifiers, which is like just a cloud in itself.
Should we chat about that for a few minutes? We probably got a little bit of time. Should we touch on that?
If you want to very briefly mention it.
Well, speaking of not being negative about things, sometimes you do kind of have to be negative about things. And Delicious Milk raises a good point that in no world should there be a tournament, let alone a qualifiers for a championships where there are randos in your lobbies. That should not happen. Thoughts, Khroen?
I'm shaking my head. Those are my thoughts. Like exactly what you said. There's no world where this should happen. It should be run way better. There should be people on a wait list. If people don't show up, they can get in. First of all, people should be taking it seriously and showing up if there's a world's qualification spot. I think that, speaks a lot to people's mindset in that regard. I don't know why people didn't show up, but admins saying, no, we can't postpone this. No, we're not going to ask anybody if we can postpone this. We're just going to go. You have to go. And some people have 5, some people have 8, some people have 7 in your lobby. It's just that's wild.
The year in 2025, we're gonna be looking back at this moment and laughing about how this actually has happened, and no, it wasn't even discussed about, right? Like no one's really. I wasn't even aware of this until Esha and Milk brought it up on social media because it was like so low profile about that, and like. As much like so here's like an example, by the way, like people like talk about Milk and how he's like pretty toxic, and I understand that there's times where Milk has earned that reputation rightfully, but like this also shows how much he really cares about the scene because he's trying to raise awareness, and I wasn't even aware of it. And the players really do care. Like a lot of the players that like meme about TFT and some of these things that are embarrassing, which quite frankly this is. They really want TFT to succeed, and we all do. And we can't be having this where 3 random players are queuing up that can completely mess over competitive integrity. That doesn't even make sense. If we had StarCraft tournaments or League of Legends tournaments where you're queuing with randoms, like what? How does that even work?
Yeah, it's like you said, Frodan. Like you and I, and Khroen too, like we've all been around esports for a long time. And like, I'm sure Khroen can talk about like ludicrous things happening at the beginning of like Heroes of the Storm esports and all that kind of stuff too, with like ridiculous tournament formats or, ridiculous invites and all that. And we're just in that time period right now for TFT where it's important to call this stuff out. But at the same time, like, it's important to recognize that, yeah, it's dumb now and it sucks for certain people, but it's going to be something that will just be like a small laughable footnote in like the history of this game as an esport. So something to keep in mind with that. Yeah.
For sure. And also, having organized like global tournaments myself, it's really hard to do it when you have almost no staff. And as far as I know, the Riot esports team in general is like mega understaffed relative to how much they really need to do, because they decided all of a sudden for their 10-year anniversary to release like 6 games, and like 2 of them almost immediately. And then like, because their community is so massive globally, they always demand competitive. And it's like, they can't scale because all of their resources were in like League of Legends, and now you're like asking them to do Valorant and TFT and Legends of Runeterra, and then what happens when other things like Wild Rift comes out, and like what about their like unannounced fighting game and like all these different things. So there's a lot, and from what I've gathered, they're heavily like understaffed, and so it's really ambitious to try to do such a global competition, but at the same time, you can't let stuff like this happen. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. If this happens again, like the next championship, then it's like, come on, right? Like, everyone gets like 1, but from this point on, it's like, come on, let's pick the ball up and keep it rolling.
I agree. Speaking of keeping it rolling, it's time to move on to our next section of the show, which is tier lists and mailbag. So we're normally, we have the player that's on the show give us a top 10 players in NA list if they're from NA generally. But I would actually kind of like to change it up a little bit. If you're okay with this, Khroen, I would like you to give me a TFT tournament players tier list. So so rather than think about ladder performance, let's think about tournament performance. Who are your top 10 tournament players in NA? Sorry to our production for making them change the graphic on the fly.
Tournament play.
Very well. Yeah.
Top 10 tournament players in NA overall.
Ooh, that's spicy.
So
yeah.
With number 1, I don't know, maybe it's ego. I don't know. I just feel like I've honestly been like the most consistent.
You can put yourself in number 1. That's totally fine.
When it comes to NA tournaments, like I've only won 1 tournament, but consistently getting to the finals lobby over a lot of like other players. I don't know.
Wow. The ego grows with the afro.
Yeah, the ego grows with the afro. I did say that.
It's already being typed in. It's official now. Khroen, best tournament player in NA. You have had, we talk about consistency. You've been in like basically every finals lobby there is to be in. So it's hard to argue with that.
If that wasn't the case, I'd definitely be like, no, I don't deserve to be there. But like, I've been to pretty much like every single finals tournament, finals of tournament like I've played in.
And Mortog bringing up you forcing Blade Master. Come on, that was 1 finals. That's unfair.
No, that was 2 finals. He did it last set too. When
okay, wow,
was the thing. I have your back, but
let's go too far back.
Forcing a strat is actually good. Remember the mech meta where there's players just forcing mech all the time?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Kiyoon won that tournament where he forced mech. Okay, it's a viable strategy.
That may have happened.
Yeah.
All right.
Who's number 2? Yeah.
All right.
Or you can pick someone and put them in other spots on the list. You don't need to go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can just pick someone and put them elsewhere.
Yeah. So I was theory crafting a list beforehand of just top 10 in general players, but I think some of these players it will translate. I'm going to for now put Aegon at number 2. I think Aegon has always been a good player and has usually translated that into some decent tournament success. Just
I would agree.
Winning the Mort Dong top 4 tournament. I think very, very good. I think for now at like number 5 and 6 respectively, Robin Songs and Marcus, or his name is M35S.
Yeah.
Marcus 35.
Marcus 35 sometimes. It's Where would you put him on the list?
At number 6, and Robin Songs at 5.
Nice. All right.
They've proven it. The past month, these 2 players have been phenomenal in tournaments. It's actually
Marcus
kind of
especially.
Marcus especially. But Robin's also killing it too.
Yeah, they've been super, super consistent. I think GV8 probably at number 3. I think GV8 has always had some pretty good tournament runs. Very good player. Even remembering like it was like way back, like the Fandom Legends tournaments. I was competing like every week against GVA in those. Pretty
playing
good.
a lot of Blender. That was the first event Frodan and I casted together, actually.
It was. That was actually the first time I casted TFT.
me too. What a coincidence.
Yeah, it was like 9 months ago. It's quite the jump.
Hard to believe, man. But yeah, that was
We've
back
gotten so much better as casters since then.
A little bit. I think I'd like to think we've improved since then. Yeah.
It's hard, man. It's a hard game to cast.
Let's go. At least recently for his performance, I think he's translated his solo queue ladder success into tournament success, or doing pretty well, as Saint Vicious at number 7, I guess. I'll leave the 4 slot open for now. I'm not sure who I'm going to put there, but
that's right. He
for
gaps
he doesn't
4 and 5
anyway. That's
a true tournament player. He's gapping 4 and 5 right now.
Yeah, there you go. There needs to be a gap between 4 and 5.
Oh man, who am I missing here? There's
Milk has won a lot of TFT.
Delicious Milk. Yeah.
Milk has done. Okay, we'll put Milk at the number 4 slot. I think Delicious Milk obviously is considered widely to be one of the best TFT, if not the best TFT player in North America, based off his performance through all the sets, and does do well in tournaments. I think tournaments for Milk, if I'm remembering correctly, sometimes are kind of like hit or miss. But yeah, generally,
he's a first or 8th gamer in tournaments.
He's a first or 8th gamer. Definitely, like, I was thinking. I actually, because obviously Soju's a really good player, but I don't think I can put Soju on a top 10 tournament player tier list.
He wouldn't either.
I just can't do it.
Right. That's understandable.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can argue with that. Yeah.
I don't know. Something about it is that either Soju gets really unlucky, or it seems like he kind of his brain like shuts down and he's just like autopiloting, or he chokes. I don't know.
I don't know. I think. Okay, a really interesting.
He's so good on ladder, and like I don't know why he can't do it in tournaments. Pretty interesting.
What about kiyoon?
Kiyoon definitely deserves to be on this list. He actually might deserve to be a little bit higher than Robin Songs or Marcus. We'll just put him at number 8 for now, but I might switch that around.
Okay.
But, talking about that Soju thing, a point that I did really quickly want to bring up is that people approach tournaments in TFT a lot the same way that they do ladder or solo queue, which I think personally is not the way to look at it at all. And I think a lot of lack of competitive experience for a lot of these players really shows when they do approach ladder the same way as tournaments. So a lot of players like, well, not a lot, but some players like Soju, who do perform very well consistently on ladder, gets tournaments, and it's just like an eighth every time. And maybe it's a little bit of a coincidence, but I think the mentality that Soju has, I might be wrong about this, but the mentality that Soju has playing tournaments maybe isn't really the one that is conducive to success there. I haven't overly analyzed Soju's tournament games to that extent, but I do think there is a significant mentality shift that a lot of players should have that don't.
I will say that I started paying a lot more attention to Soju's tournament results when I noticed that he just didn't really perform in a lot of them. And it does seem like, outside of the times where he does get 8th, because, maybe he wasn't playing well or he's like forfeits, but he also seems to experience some really omega low rolls that I have like not really seen, right? Like that Shaco one like last week was one of them, but like there's another time where like I think he like had 1 KO and it was completely uncontested. He rolled like 60 gold and couldn't find another KO for the rest of the game. That kind of stuff. And it feels like that happens to him very often. Of course, I think it's just confirmation bias, but it's just one of those things where it feels like when I do see it happen to Soju, it's like, what? Oh, of course it happens to this guy.
Yeah.
Well, somebody has to be well, we had like the King of Silver in StarCraft 2, right? Where it's like they would make it pretty far, but they would always something would happen to hold them from like the top tiers of success. But we've got 2 more spots. We'll see if we can think. What about some newer players that are coming up? Because it doesn't need to be like all time. It can be like, what about Cottontail, who's had some
literally just Cottontail and Simple Player players that I was just thinking of. And I think that Cottontail definitely does deserve to be on this list at some point. I think actually I do want to move Kiyoon to number 5, then just move everyone else down 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think overall kiyoon's tournament performance has been very good, and these newer players like well, newer to I guess having success in the tournament, seen Robin Songs and Marcus are good, but I do think kiyoon deserves a spot above those. But yeah, then at number 10, or sorry, at number 9, number 10, maybe Cottontail and Simple Plan.
Cottontail higher than Simple Plan?
Yeah, I
makes
think
sense.
so. I think so. It's definitely a debatable, but I'm gonna say that.
No, I
It's
think that's
interesting. Some of the omissions from the list, right? Like Sox's name never came up once, and I consider Sox to be like one of the best players like in the game.
I do too. If there's a top 10 overall list, Sox is definitely on there. At top
Khroen's not on here either, and Khroen's like also a ladder consistency, like a ladder god, but like
he's been in a lot of
his tournament results has also kind of been all over the place. Like sometimes he dominates, and sometimes he also bombs out. So that's interesting.
I think that's maybe. Do you think that's maybe the category that Sox falls into as well?
I know actually Sox can't compete. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he like can't compete in some of the tournaments because he like works at a job. But I do think so. Or he works another job.
I'll type it to protection.
I typed it there too. I was a little distracted, but
he's asking us about spelling and stuff like that, which is totally understandable.
Yeah, right. But okay, but going back to Sox, I think I actually don't even remember many of his tournament results. Like I know obviously he's a good player, but I might have to fact check myself on that one, and maybe he would deserve a spot in this list. But I don't know.
Sure. I would say that Sox is kind of like a master GM like tier player in the tournament scene because if he had more time, he would do much better. But like at a certain point, you have to just get more volume of games. I think Sox has only played in a few tournaments. Not to be confused with Master GM skill. He's like obviously like one of the best, of course, in the game. I'm just saying more like he doesn't have the opportunities really, and you got to like put in the volume because you're going to eventually bomb out some of these tournaments, and you need to have more chances. So I like to see Sox compete more, but he's already talked about it extensively on his own stream and on forums that he's just too busy with his job, and he wants to keep TFT like a part-time thing, and he also wants to prove that you can be like one of the best at the game without actually being full-time playing it and streaming it all the time, which I think is also admirable in its own right.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Sox is a super smart player and applies a lot of knowledge to being good at the game and just is a good gamer in general. I would be very curious to see, Sox like, full-time all the TFT, all that he did, because I think he would, if that was the case, be, known as one of the best, if not the best, NA TFT players amongst like Melk and people like that. But yeah.
I think we have to give Solus an honorable mention as well for a lot of good performance.
Like every tier that we ever do.
Like mention Solus. I don't know. Sorry, it's just early on, great. Like recent, I know Solus is in chat too. I love watching you play, man. Sorry.
Can I have like 2 or 3 honorable mention slots? Is that a thing that I can have?
I think we have to move on anyway. But I just wanted to sneak that in there because we have to keep the tradition going, But. Yeah. So I think we do have one or two questions for Khroen for the mailbag. We're a little bit past an hour today, which is fine. Hey Khroen, what do you think separates your from the pack when it comes to tourneys? Is it something about your play style, tournament meta, rule set, mindset, etc.? Thanks from Asian Head. P.S. Any chance you could help out your teammate Soju for these NA qualifiers? It seems like you might need it. Wow. Oh boy. All right. Well, tackle that one however you want.
Yeah, so I think what separates me from the pack when it comes to tournaments is my mindset and approach towards it. I think that a lot of players will not do things like look at all the players and research the games that they've had previously that are going into your lobby, kind of have a top 4 rather than a 1st or 8th play style. I recognize when I do need to play 1st or 8th, but generally, if it is safe, I will just try to play top 4, which I think is one of the reasons that gets me to the finals of a lot of tournaments. There's even, I think the Giant Slayer Series Season 2 finals, I was like a couple of points behind Gunmei going to the final game. I had played just consistent top 4 every single time. I was like, all right, this is the game where I need to go 1st or 8th. So I need to play super, super risky, change my play style up, and ended up not working. I ended up actually going 8th that game, but that's just to say that like you need to recognize the scenarios where you do have to go for things like that. I ended up losing, but still getting 2nd place because I'd played, super well for the previous, 3 or 4 games. Gunmei obviously played better, and I think Gunmei If I could put Gummy in a tournament tier list, man, Gummy would be up there, but he's a U, so that's okay. But
he's in chat right now. He wants to be NA so bad. Like, I understand.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you on the server, but you know, we got to talk about all of that other tournament acquired residency, all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Move to NA. Decides to not retire from TFT. He can come on the show.
That's right. Decides to move to North America.
Oh man.
Wear your mask. It'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I just real quick. I love the Gunmei arc from him wanting to improve and actually doing so, and just being a tournament beast and like everything after that. I wish Gunmei would just stick with competing for as long as he wants to. But
yeah,
anyways,
that's true. And the thing is, esports retirement doesn't mean anything, as we know from like years and years of esports. Esports retirement is just a tweet, man. It's meaningless. You can come back whenever you want. We've seen players unretire millions of times. I'm just putting that out there, Gunmei, for you. Don't worry about it. If you want to unretire, it's common in esports. Anytime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've got another question. As someone who is a part of the early esports community for Heart of the Swarm and now TFT, do you notice
Heart of the Swarm?
Heart of the Swarm. See,
you see how that's where your brain goes.
Damn.
Frodan knows why this happens, because he also casted StarCraft 2, and they use the same acronym for their StarCraft 2 expansion as they did for a different game entirely, which was based on the SC2 engine initially. But anyway, that's besides the point. It happens. Heroes of the Storm. Mm-hmm. You've seen the two games come up. Yeah. Any similarities, differences? What would you say is better / worse about TFT, besides obviously the benefit of TFT having a scene? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, honestly, okay. So honestly, one of the biggest differences is literally Mort Dog. It is a Mort Dog diff, and I think Mort Dog is so good for the TFT community, being as involved as engaged as he is, and that really helps out TFT and makes me very hopeful for the future. Even though like I'm not sure exactly how much say Mort Dog has in terms of like the esports side of things, but even just in terms of knowing that the game's going to go in a good direction, it's actually just a Mort Dog diff there. I would like to see I don't know, concerning esports and stuff. For me, it's felt a bit slow in terms of the startup of a lot of TFT esports, and really without GiantSlayer, it would be extremely lackluster for TFT. I am very glad that Riot is starting to step into the direction of starting up these things, and there is a World's Championship. But I think that for the next year and next set for TFT, that there should be kind of like tournaments throughout the year, like regional tournaments like HOTS had in the early days. Every few months we knew like, oh, we qualify for a tournament, we go to a LAN, and that would be something to look forward to. But for TFT, it really feels as though it's just like not to the point where I'd like it to be right now. And I know that with COVID and everything, it's probably slowed a lot of stuff down. But yeah, I'm just after HOTS got axed by Blizzard, I'm just like, man, I really want to compete in something again. I really want to compete. I'm a competitor at heart, and I just want more opportunities for that. I do well at tournaments. That's
a pro gamer mentality, Khroen. That is what gets you to where you are at right now. That is a pro gamer mentality. That's right.
Yeah.
And
love it.
Great news. I've heard that Mort Dog has a lot of free time, and he'll be able to take on all of the esports responsibilities as well. Announcement right here, guys. He's got free time, and I would I don't know if that chat, that his message right now in chat, don't worry about that. That was just he's speechless because he's so happy. I understand everything. Yeah. Don't worry. It's true. Trust me.
There's one thing that Mort doesn't have. He's got a lot of things. It's definitely not a lot of Or maybe he does, because apparently he applies to every doofus on the internet about and defends the position. I don't know why he does it. I mean, I do know why. It's because he's so passionate about the game. But
he has
a little too much free time, if you ask me.
He is a precious diamond of the video game community, and we, he needs to be as strong as one to handle all the trolls, and he's doing good so far. Props to Mort. But yeah, okay. So I think that should pretty much do it as far as questions and things like that go. As far as our topics for today, we went a little bit over time, but that's okay because it was a great conversation. Any parting thoughts before we end the show here, Frodan? I'll have you talk, then I'll have Khroen talk. What do you got to say?
Yeah, I think Khroen summarized really well. Like, it does a lot to hit the follow button on this channel if you haven't already, or at least like share the link. Growing TFT starts like at every single avenue, helping the streamers, helping the organizers, helping raise awareness on social media and all that stuff. So if you see like this channel and you haven't followed it, make sure you do so. If you aren't following Khroen on Twitter or like at least a stream, just getting those numbers up across the board helps the game a lot. And you might feel like you're only one person, but that's if everyone contributes in that way, the scene will continue to flourish. So, get out there and talk and engage. And I think it'll be like a really awesome time. And the TFT community is really awesome. So you should stick around.
Totally agree. All right, Khroen, parting thoughts. And also, where can people find you right now if they don't know already?
Yeah, sure. Parting thoughts. First and foremost, thank you all for having me. I had a wonderful time here. I enjoy getting to talk about the game, talk about tournament, all that kind of stuff. Make sure to follow me on Twitch and Twitter at Khroen, Khroen. I do stream TFT pretty frequently. Can also find me tweeting about some D&D nonsense maybe sometimes on Twitter. Yada
Nice.
yada. But yeah, also make sure to check out DoA and Frodan on their socials as well. You guys have been doing a lot for TFT in the scene and the game, and pretty instrumental part of the process here in terms of getting this into something long lasting, and that I'm happy to be a part of. I just want to compete. I just want TFT to be like so big and to make a lasting impact in it. That's my goal. I want to be someone that makes an impact.
One step at a time.
Awesome.
One step at a time, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks to everybody out there watching this. Like Frodan said and Khroen said, any way you can share it, get more people watching, get more people playing is great, right? Because we know the game is good. We know there's like endless amounts of things to talk about and debate in it. It's so much fun. So you gotta spread that, right? You got to spread the TFT love out there. And major props to GiantSlayer as well for, I think really, and I feel like I can say this realistically, like putting the TFT scene on its back and carrying it through most of 2020 with the amount of tournaments and support and shows for the scene. It really has been something else. I know I'm saying this being on a GiantSlayer show, but objectively, I think we can all see this as well. But yeah, that'll be about it. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Definitely tune in a couple weeks from now for more Teamfight Talk Show. Thanks to my epic co-host, Frodan, and our epic guest, Khroen, as well, for being on the show. Fight night tomorrow, Thursday night on a GiantSlayer as well. So definitely check out the social media stuff. Yeah, that's right. Khroen casts a lot of
casting.
Yeah, and you're a great caster too. On top of all this stuff, a man of many talents. If there was an esports EGOT, you'd be going for it. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Teamfight Talk Show. We'll see you next time.